Pamela Geller has a problem. The anti-Islamist who promotes her own brand of vitriol on her blog, Atlas Shrugs, as well as through her group, American Freedom Defense Initiative, won the right to post inflammatory and hatefully bigoted subway placards in a court case 2 years ago. However, what she did not win is an unfettered right to use the image of the beheaded journalist James Foley, free of any criticism which might undermine her attempt to stir anti-Muslim animus. Geller created an ad which she hoped to place in the subway walls in San Francisco and New York, showing the famous still image of Foley in an orange jumper just moments before a mass terrorist killed him, over the caption, "It's Islamo-realism." Unfortunately for Geller, Foley's family took offense, not only because they have asked that people not use the image as they prefer that people remember their relative for his life and not for his death, but also because they insist that Foley would not have approved of the subtext of the message. A letter from the family to Geller's organization reads in part, having lived in and reported from communities in which nearly everyone was of Muslim faith, he had great respect for religion and for those who practiced it. Apparently shamed by the request, Geller has agreed not to use the image and will instead substitute another picture of somebody else's son being murdered, because apparently subtlety is not something Geller understands. Violence erupted in the state of Gujarat in western India recently, where police have arrested 140 people after 2 men were stabbed during violence between Hindus and Muslims. The clashes, which left more than a dozen injured, are said to have been triggered by an image posted on Facebook. Gujarat's government deployed riot police to control the clashes in the city of Vadodara and appealed to religious leaders to intervene to curb them. Mobile telephone, internet, and bulk text messaging were suspended for 4 days as a precautionary step. The incident coincided with a visit to the United States by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who met President Barack Obama, who was on a trip emphasizing India's economic potential. For almost a decade, Modi was unwelcome in the United States after Washington revoked his visa in 2005 over accusations of religious intolerance stemming from riots 3 years early in Gujarat when he was that state's chief minister. At least 1,000 people, mostly Muslims, died during a month of rioting in Gujarat at the time, and critics say Modi did not do enough to stop the violence, but the courts found insufficient evidence to back up that allegation. Modi's early training was in a movement that sees Indian culture as being primarily Hindu. Emboldened by his emphatic election victory in May, Hindu hardliners have been agitating across much of India against religious minorities. India has a dark history of religious violence, especially between Hindu majority and Muslims, who account for more than 150 million people, making India the world's 3rd most populous Muslim nation. The latest violence has marred the celebrations of the Navratri festival and involves men and women in prayer, music, and dance. It follows a campaign by radical Hindu groups to bar Muslims and other religious minorities from taking part in the traditionally tolerant festivities. A radical monk who heads a movement accused of stirring violence against Muslims in Myanmar has announced a partnership with a hardline Buddhist group in Sri Lanka to defend their religion. The declaration by Ashin Wirathu, who once called himself the Burmese bin Laden, was the clearest signal to date of a push to spread the ideology of his controversial 969 movement beyond Myanmar. I'd like to announce that 969 and I will join hands with Sri Lanka's Badu Bala Sena, or BBS, to protect Buddhists all around the world, he said. The BBS has been accused of tyrannizing the minority Muslim community in Sri Lanka. In his 8-minute speech, Wirathu thanked Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa for granting him the visa despite protests by some Muslim groups in the island nation. Critics fault the president for failing to rein in the BBS's activities. Wirathu, escorted by black-clad special security personnel, was welcomed at the Buddhist convention by traditional drummers and sat in the front row amid thousands of local monks. He told the gathering that Buddhism was under siege, mainly from Muslim extremists, and said both his group and the BBS use nonviolent means to safeguard their religion. The BBS convention was held amid mounting speculation that there will be an early presidential election in Sri Lanka, possibly as soon as January, in which President Rajapaksa is expected to run for a 3rd term. The BBS Secretary General said in a speech that his group would dictate the outcome of the election and future of the country thanks to its grassroots support. It also proposed a policy framework under which Sri Lanka would be declared a Buddhist Sinhala nation rather than a multi-ethnic nation.